Now that I've got the live edge board cut into pieces that I'm going to be using for the box, this is going to be the portion that I use for the sides of the box. And now I need to carve the pattern out of the side that I'm going to be using. So I have a molding on the top, molding on the bottom, and a recessed section in the center. And before I did that, because I've never worked with cherry, before I did that on my final piece, I wanted to use a practice piece. This one had a rotted spot and a split, and so it was a good test piece to learn how to use on. Had a little bit of a knot in there too. And so this is what the pattern is going to look like, more or less. The bottom is going to be heartwood and the top's going to be sapwood. This is the recessed panel in the center, and then we've got double beading. We've got some double fillets on the top molding and some double fillets on the bottom molding. And I just played around with different sizes for the fillets. And so I'm just going to discuss a little bit about how I did this and how I'm going to proceed doing the remainder of the pieces for the entire side of the box. And you can see this is the pattern here, the profile that I wanted to get. So the first thing I did was squared the sides, squared this face to this face here. It doesn't really matter which face you choose. It's just I wanted the inside face to be my reference face for when I do the joinery, so I'm going to use this face as my reference face. I used this Sargent transitional plane. It's a wood-bodied plane with some metal on it, so they call these transitional planes because it's not quite all wood and it's not quite all metal yet. This one's got a fence on it, and this fence can be set to different angles. Right now I've got it set to 90 degrees. You can adjust the angle of the fence by loosening this knob and then sliding it using either a protractor. You can set other angles, but it goes for quite a range. I mean, about 30 degrees. You can do about that, about 30 degrees off. So it's a Sargent VBM number 3416. I'm not sure how common these are. I've never seen them before. And this one, I don't think this comes with a fence standard. This one just had one on it. But it's got a nice sharp blade. I've got it slightly rounded, but it's 99% straight. I didn't want the edges to dig in, but the edge is behind the fence, so it's not that big of a deal. And I also want the edge straight across, which is why the centerpiece here is straight across for about an inch. And then anything beyond that is just ever so slightly convex so the edges don't dig in. Now, watching this now, I'm definitely still learning how to block a video. I should not be standing between the camera and the work, so I apologize for that. I'm just showing a few of the many passes it took to square the edges. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have any tear out, so I was taking very fine shavings. And then a couple passes the other way, just to make sure that I have it nice and square. So that's how I squared the sides to the face. And the next step, of course, was to get the face nice and smooth, and you've seen this before. This is number 5, 4-plane or jack plane. Something I will be trying on the final piece is this is a toothing plane. And let me take the blade out of here and show you what it looks like. See if it'll come up on the video. You can kind of see all those little lines there. Those are all little tiny grooves, and so the end of the blade looks like a very fine saw. That's what I call it, a toothing plane. Looks like a lot of little teeth. And so what that'll do, when you have wood that's like this, where the grain's going all over the place, is it'll create grooves in there, which make it easier to remove the wood without tear out. I used the toothing plane diagonally across the board, and that cut the grain up into little tiny slivers, and the jack plane just pulled them all off the board nice and smooth. No tear out. Now let's just get a look at all those little slices on the surface. You see all those very tiny little scratches just on the surface. Now normally with undulating grain I would try and skew the plane as I was going across the board to avoid tear out. But now that I've used the toothing plane, it just planes these little tiny strips off, almost like sawdust. Like little strips of sawdust, and I can go right into the grain head on, without any fear of tear out whatsoever. The toothing plane really did a good job. I'm very glad I used it. Now here I'm trying to take some twist out of the board. I'm also going back and forth, trying to get rid of that low spot. You can see the dark spot toward the center of the board. I'm just going to keep using the plane until that's out of there and nice and flat. See it disappearing now right before your eyes. So once I had the faces planed and squared to each other, I used this, which is a plow plane. I don't know the maker of this one, but a plow plane is very similar to, it's like the predecessor of the Stanley combination planes, like the 45 and 55 and all those crazy planes. It's got a skate on the bottom of it, a metal skate here, and you can, and on the backs of the blades you can use in them, they have an indentation scraped out there that matches the point on the skate, and then you can just slide the blade right along there, and that holds it nice and centered. You can't go back and forth. The wedge drives it into the skate so it stays there. Most plow planes have a depth adjustment. That's what this is here, and this has a screw arm filister, a fence that you can move back and forth and adjust. And this one will accommodate a blade fairly wide. And just like those combination planes, with these plow planes you can get many different blades, different widths. Some have different shapes on the end of them. You can get a blank and carve a profile in there, whatever you like, and you can get a nice little molding out of it. This one here is rounded on the end of it. It's hard to see in this light though. So you can get a cove out of it, you can get a point, a chamfer, whatever you're looking for. And that's the plow plane. So what I did with the plow plane was set the filister off so that the blade was going to contact the wood and drive down a channel on the inside edge of this relief, all the way down to the bottom. And that's what I did on both sides. And now I've outlined the area that I want to remove the wood all the way down to the bottom. Before I use my plow plane, I'm going to use my cutting gauge to mark the two lines that outline the beads I'm trying to create here. I'm going to use the plow plane up to the edge of these lines and then plow down the depth I need to get the radius I want for my beads. When I use a plow plane, just like when I'm using a router plane or a molding plane, I like to start with the plow plane at the end of the workpiece and slowly work back in making smaller cuts until I've got a full first cut from the front of the board all the way to the end of the board. And now I'm just doing one final pass, making sure that the plow plane is all the way at the bottom. Alright, bottomed out all the way across. Time to flip it around and do this one. So, now I've got this massive wood in the center that I need to remove. And to remove it quickly, I went to my trusty scrub plane, and you can see that in this video here. Show how to use a scrub plane. And I removed the wood in the middle down to just above where I wanted the final depth to be, and you'll get a feel for that based on how you set your scrub plane. The scrub plane has a very rounded blade. It's a very tight radius plane, so it's going to leave some pretty deep scalloping on your wood. So you want to stop short of your final depth to make sure that you don't scallop down too far. So I left that a little proud, and then moved to, this is a rabbit plane, Miller's Falls number 85. It's got a depth stop, it has a nicker, and you can adjust this so that you have different depth nicks, and you can also adjust the depth that you're going to rabbit in. And also you can put a fence on it, but I have the fence off right now. And so what I did with this was I went over with the rabbit plane and went alongside this edge here to bring that down to the bottom. And once that was flush to the bottom, turn it around, did the other side. Now I had a small spot in the center. You can see it doesn't quite overlap. So I had a small spot in the center that was a little high. It's talking a few thousandths of an inch here. Okay, push the blade. This one has this is a Miller's Falls. The number is 85. Miller's Falls 85. And you can advance and retract the blade with this lever. It's a very handy feature, so you don't have to do it just with your fingers. Once you have the blade set up and straightened, you can just retract it and then keep pushing it across the wood till it starts engaging bit by bit. And just keep engaging it. It's very handy. Ever so slightly. Okay.
And so to remove that high spot, I got out my large jointer plane by Marples.
Ooh, what do you know? It just barely fits.
Now I start off with the plane iron retracted. I'm going to slowly advance it with this hammer here until I start to get it to catch. And I'll stop advancing it once I get the size shavings I'm looking for.
The reason this slide's so nice is the bottom's treated with paraffin wax and beeswax. Let's see how we do. There we go. Taking the finest shavings off of this right now. Really starting to look good. Now this is a Marples 24-inch jointer. It's wood bodied, really thick blade, and you can see the video here about this one. There we go.
In the next segment I'll use a sash Felster plane to cut the rebates and I'll use a hollow plane to round over the molding. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section below. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe for more. Thanks, and happy woodworking.